In this example, we want to solve x squared equals negative x minus 1. And we're going to use the quadratic formula again. Remember, the quadratic formula has to be in standard form before we solve it. So, to get this in standard form, I have to move this right side over to the left side and have it equal to 0. So we're going to add x to both sides and add 1 to both sides to get x squared plus x plus 1 equals 0. So I've moved the right side over to the left side. And now we have to use the formula. We want to identify a, b, and c. And a is equal to 1, b is equal to 1, c is equal to 1. And now we plug it into the formula. Remember the formula. I hope you're remembering this now as we do this more and more. What is the formula? What is the quadratic formula? The solution is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That's the solution to the quadratic equation in standard form. And we plug in a, b, and c. So let's plug in a, b, and c. So we have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1 divided by 2 times 1. A, b, and c are all 1 in this case, so it makes it quite simple. Now if we simplify underneath the root, we'll have 1 squared, which is 1, minus 4 times 1 times 1, minus 4. So 1 minus 4 gives me negative 3. So we have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 all over 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Now, we can't square root negative 3. As we may have seen in complex numbers, this is an imaginary number, imaginary solution. So, in terms of a real solution, we can't go any further because we can't square root negative 3. So we would say this is no real solution. There's no real solution to this because I can't go any further. I can't square root this negative 3. It's an imaginary solution. And so, for our purposes, right here, we'll say no real solution. Now, if you were going on into more math, you would actually go ahead and do imaginary numbers and get what we call an imaginary solution. But for our purposes, once you hit the square root of a negative number, that means there's no real solution. We're asked to solve this quadratic equation, 1/2 x squared minus x equals 2. Now sometimes now when you're given a fraction where we have a half here, sometimes it's easier to clear out the fraction from the equation by multiplying by the LCD. So sometimes we want to clear out the fraction by multiplying by the LCD. And so what is the LCD of this equation? Well, the LCD is 2. Notice there's a 2 here in the denominator, and then these actually are over 1. So let's multiply everything by 2. 2 times a half gives me 1, so I'll have an x squared. 2 times negative x gives me negative 2x, and 2 times 2 equals 4. The next thing you want to do is you want to put this in standard form to use a formula. So subtract 4 from both sides. Subtract 4 from both sides. So if we subtract 4 from both sides, what we end up with is x squared minus 2x minus 4 equals 0. And now we can use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula says that x is equal to negative b, that's negative b, negative negative 2, that gives me a plus 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, times c, which is negative 4, times negative 4 here. That's all underneath the square root, all divided by 2a, 2 times 1, a is 1. Okay, and we simplify this, we'll have 2 plus or minus the square root of what? Let's do this. 2 squared, negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. And we have a negative times a negative, which is positive. So I have 4 plus 16 gives me 20 on the top. And then 2 here on the bottom. 2 times 1 is 2. So that's my solution. So my solution is 2 plus or minus the square root of 20 over 2. However, sometimes we can simplify the root. We can't square root it because it's not a perfect square. But we can simplify 20 into a number where I can square root one of those numbers. And 20 is actually equal to 4 times 5. So really this is 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 5 over 2. This dot is a times. And I can square root this 4, because what is the square root of 4? 2. So we'll have 2 plus or minus 2, square root of 4 is 2. Leave the 5 underneath the root, so we'll have root 5 over 2. Why am I doing this? Because we can simplify this answer, and it looks better, it's easier to work with if I can simplify it. Notice I have a 2 here, I have a 2 here, and I also have a 2 in the bottom. I can factor this 2 out of the top. In other words, I factor the 2 out, and what I'm left with, if I take 2 out of here, I'm left with 1. We're using the distributive property, the reverse distributive property. And I take a 2 out of here, I'm left with 1. We don't have to write that 1, because we can leave it as root 5. So we have 1 plus or minus root 5. And then we have still that 2 on the bottom. And what happens to these 2's? Well, 2 divided by 2 will cancel, will give me 1. So my answer is 1 plus or minus root 5. Those are my solutions. 1 plus or minus root 5. In other words, 1 plus root 5, 1 minus root 5. And again, you want to check these solutions inside your equation to make sure they actually work. You want to check that 1 plus root 5 and 1 minus root 5 actually work for that equation. So now we know how to use a quadratic formula. We may want to start applying this to some real-life situations. Remember the formulation, memorize that because it's foolproof, it always works. It will give you a solution, or it will tell you if there's no real solution.